All right, Mr. Mothership, what we are going to try to do now, and we're going to take their word for it, the AEW website on who works for them, or last time they checked who was working for them, and we're going to go up and down the roster briefly and see if they do have the makings of an actual wrestling promotion there, or if they're hopelessly infested with the trampoline cowboys and can't field a decent team. Because we can't watch their television program and keep track of who wrestles there because you don't see people for months at a time. So, do you have that roster in front of you, Brian?
I do, and just for argument's sake, I looked at the Ring of Honor roster, but it appears they have not updated this page since the sale.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, and it may be more difficult than we imagined.
Well, Jim...
But...
Oh, go ahead.
Is it alphabetical, or how have they arranged this?
It's alphabetical, but why don't we start with the champions?
Okay. Well, that'll take all day.
The current... Only AEW champions.
Okay.
The current AEW World Heavyweight Champion is Jon Moxley.
Okay, regardless of what I personally think about Plummer Moxley, he's a name, and the team is in need, and considering the rest of the state of the field, I would keep him. I would just not let him surrender to his worst and or stupidest instincts. You know, and I would try to make him serious about being my world champion and my top star instead of going and begging on to be on outlaw shows just because he likes to have fun playing with children in barbed wire. But I'd keep Moxley, because you could get something out of him if you could control him.
For this, I'm only going to do the men's roster, not the women's roster right now.
Well, yeah, for heaven's sake. They got bigger problems than whether they got a good female roster or not.
The AEW World Tag Team Champions are the Acclaimed, Max Caster and Anthony Bowens.
Okay, and obviously I would keep them too, because even though they're greener than pepper trees still, you know, they've got energy and enthusiasm and excitement, and the people have liked them. And yes, the scissoring thing is ludicrous, but at least they're not scissoring with their opponents and making everything phony. It's just their goofy baby faces. So I can live with that. And I admire the work that they've done in getting themselves over and in, you know, doing it all themselves, because, again, it's not something that their booking has helped with. But I'd keep the Acclaimed.
The AEW Trios World Tag Team Champions, Death Triangle, Penta El Zero Miedo, Rey Fenix, and Pac.
When is the next train to Tijuana or the boat to Britain?
I don't know if there's a direct train to Tijuana.
Well, let's see if we can charter one. Okay, first of all, Pac, I've said it before, I'll summarize. Looks like $1 million, tremendous looking athlete, looks like a badass, great physique, can move around and do shit, has no idea whatsoever how to have a fucking match. They all fall apart. He won't stay off the top rope, even though it takes him an hour and a half to come off of it. And in all of his matches, instead of trying to be an ass kicker like he looks, he tries to be a goddamn gymnast like the rest of them. And it's been 3 years. If we were going to see anything different, we'd have seen it by now. And the same thing with Penthouse and Felix. You see one of their matches, what's the difference? They do the same shit in the same way, and it all looks phony, and they're holding hands and doing cheerleading routines. If I was booking the El Toreo Bull Ring in Mexico, I'd put them on top. For an American television promotion, they're the shits. So let's put those in the toss column.
Beyond your feelings about their work or anything else, do you also take into account they've been there since the very beginning? If you're looking at this as something moving forward,
yes.
Do you want to mix up the roster?
Yeah, again, we've seen all that we can see from these people. They do the same fucking shit all the time. And, you know, again, yes, they're big names in the world of lucha libre. and I have no problem with them inhabiting that world. But the matches they have with the rest of their friends that want to do leaps and dives and flips and cartwheels and round-offs and uneven parallel bars, it's just bullshit, and it's all the same.
The AEW TNT champion is Wardlow.
Good Lord. Well, I would say keep him, but I wish he would hurry up and go to the WWE because we looked up his age. The clock is ticking. He's in his mid-30s. If he doesn't do it sooner than later, he's not going to do it at all. And, you know, what an opportunity for somebody to take advantage of this guy and his natural magnetism. But they have so far shot themselves in the foot on that. But yes, I'd keep Wardlow.
The AEW All-Atlantic champion is Orange Cassidy.
Do we have an incinerator rather than a garbage can?
We don't, but apparently there's a train to Tijuana.
Well, good. Well, put him on that and then blow up the bridge as it heads across the Rio Grande. No, he needs to not only be fired, but also penalized or punished in some way for crimes against nature. Yeah, he's done. Get him the fuck out of there.
All right, those are the current male AEW champions. Again, we're not counting Ring of Honor champions or any other affiliated title or FTW title even, I guess. We're going to go in alphabetical order through the men's roster here. Jim, Aaron Solo of The Factory.
I mean, you know, when we get down this far, can anybody ever even say, wow, what a match Aaron Solo had, because he's never on television except if he's in the group that does QT's job or whatever. And I don't really know whether he has potential or not, but are we getting down to saying, okay, if we can find a good wrestling school and put these guys in it, we'll keep them? If they're booking him per night and giving him a little experience, fine, but I can't even honestly say that's a legitimate roster member, right?
And I don't think this is some young new wrestler who hasn't been around in a while. So when you talk about training him, I mean, there's honing up on your skills, but this isn't a wrestler who needs to be freshly trained.
Well, yes, it is.
Or it shouldn't be, I guess is the way I should put it.
Well, no, he's been around for a while, but again, I don't even think we need to write him down in the keep or get rid of because he's barely there as it is. And there's any one of, right now, just being honest, as a talent evaluator, there's any one of 100 guys that could do the same thing he's doing, which is nothing. So if they have a group of guys they want to concentrate on for 3 years down the road and have a plan, and it's a manageable number of 4 or 5 or 6 guys, that's one thing. But if it's just like, oh, so-and-so trained him, so we'll keep him around, and then there ends up 20 of those, what are you fucking doing?
Well, here's an interesting one for you. Adam Cole.
Well, we need an injured reserved list because, again, this is tough. In a perfect world, the Adam Cole from NXT would have wandered in and done some business, but instead they put him in with the kids and he got hurt and he hadn't wrestled in the last, 4 months because they were doing all that goofy shit that caused him to get hurt. Again, I would keep Adam Cole on the roster. I would just try to get the best of Adam Cole instead of the worst of it. I would encourage him to eat a Twinkie every once in a while, put on a pound or two, maybe do a push-up. But more importantly, I would just get him away from the Hardley Boys and the rest of the bad influence and let him be the talent that he used to be. So in some of these cases, we're going to keep a guy that's been the shits because he cannot be the shits. He has that opportunity. He has that option. Pockets doesn't have that option. He's going to be the shits regardless of what he tries to do about it. So I'd keep Adam Cole, but he's injured.
Hangman Adam Page.
Page can go because of his attitude, and it ain't never going to get any better. He's never proven that he can do anything well except backflip off the top rope blind. He can't cut a fucking believable promo. He's a problem in the locker room. He started all this goddamn hoo-ha, but he's also been the guy running his pie hole saying, well, I don't take advice from veterans. We've figured all this out on our own. You can't do anything with a guy like that because you can't help people that don't want to help themselves. He doesn't want to learn. He doesn't want to admit his mistakes. He doesn't want to straighten up his attitude, and he thinks he's a star even though he's not. That's the first person I'd get rid of. You can find people that can do that athletic shit all day long, and if you want a cowboy, you can find one that looks more like a cowboy than the guy that wears butterflies on his fucking jeans and a fucking pancake box fucking mix headband.
All right, well, what about Alex Reynolds of the Dark Order?
Which one is he?
He is the one that teams with the one you call Little Brutus.
Oh, yeah, he can go. You can find another fucking 100 guys that can do whatever the fuck he does. And also, 3 years in a job guy group that's been a joke since the beginning. Clean your fucking closet out, Tony. Go ahead. Keep going.
Andrade El Idolo.
People say he can work. Do we ever see him work? Or does he just stand in the back and bring out the assistant and have unintelligible, marble-mouthed interviews with other underneath talent?
He is a talented wrestler. I liked him when he was a masked wrestler as La Sombra. I don't think anything's been done to make him stand out to a United States television wrestling audience. He's just another guy who could have good matches, and his character hasn't worked.
Okay, in that case, let's keep Andre Olio, and let's make it a rule that he never speaks again, and we put Alex Abrahantes with him as his manager so that Andrade can speak Spanish, and then Alex can say, and Andrade says...
You know, why don't you do... Well, now I'm fantasy booking this, that you came up with this. You could do what they did with Waldo Von Erich. I mean, not to that level, where he says something so offensive that you ban him from talking ever again on TV. And whatever he has to say has to come through Alex, or he has to whisper it to Alex, and then Alex has to say... Because that's what they did, right? Waldo Von Erich was banned from talking on TV, so he'd have to whisper to the Grand Wizard what he wanted to say, and then the Grand Wizard would yell it.
The way I heard the story, it cost him the TV in Cleveland or wherever it was.
It cost him the TV somewhere once. It may have been Cleveland. I forget what town, but that wasn't even the WWF. That was NWF.
Yeah, that was the Pedro Martinez. We can't say on this show what he said on TV, can we?
No, I certainly would not. And it's amazing.
So everybody's going to be sitting there going, what the fuck did he say?
It's amazing the things you used to be able to get away with, but maybe that would work for Andrade.
Well, he didn't get away with that either, though.
No, that's true. That's true.
And never used a curse word.
Well, speaking of people who get away with stuff, what would you do about Angelico?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Is there a plastic bag you just dump him in, throw him off a bridge?
No.
Well, in that case, just fire him.
That option is not there, so I guess we'll be firing Angelico.
Yeah.
Cool Hand Angelo Parker of the Jericho Appreciation Society.
Okay, honestly, and boy, we're still only in the A's. If 2.0, Cool Hand Luke and his partner Daddy Mac Daddy, if they weren't with Jericho, they do have, as you said, a lot of oomph to them.
Yeah.
If they could be revamped and retrained, I would keep them, because the only thing, it was just two guys that came out of nowhere, got shoved down our throats, and then were immersed into this Jericho Appreciation Society sports entertainment bullshit where, the one guy's got a switchblade comb and blah, blah, blah. There may be something there. We could keep them, see what happens.
What about the governor, Anthony Ogogo of the Factory?
He needs to go. Wake me up, Anthony, before you go. Because he's had 2 matches.
Hold on.
Fuck.
What's Anthony Ogogo's record for 2022 overall? So that means tag matches and singles matches. What do you think his record is?
What, 0-0? When's the last time we saw the fucking guy?
Apparently he's 14-0.
What?
I guess this is all on YouTube. They tried to make a guy with that Cody program, and then we never saw him on TV ever again.
Well, he was a boxer, high-level athlete from another sport. That's fine. I guess Cody was training him. That's fine. That was a couple of years ago. He went back to England, had, I think, another eye surgery because he's blind in one eye.
Yeah.
Now, is he in his early 30s? We don't know. I don't know how old he is, but he's been a boxer. Now he's been wrestling for a couple of years, part-time. He's another guy. Yes, if you had 4 or 5 guys, we're going to fucking invest in them. We're going to bring them along. We're going to give them experience, whatever. And you decided a plan for and that's those people. But when you've got 25 of them, what the fuck? And, somebody else needs to worry about this. You're putting a roster together for now, not for 5 years from now, with all of these people. Has he been standing out? Apparently out in the parking lot is where he's been standing, but I don't have room for go to stay right now.
Austin Gunn of the Gunn Club.
Definitely keep. Let's put Colton down there too while we're at it, even though he's not alphabetical. Because,
what about Billy Gunn?
Well, of course. All 3 of the Guns. I don't know that I would have broken them up, although Billy's probably happy about it. But Colton and Austin are one of the heel teams of the future.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
There you go.
What about Brendan? Excuse me, it's not Brendan. It's Brandon Cutler.
Cutlet can be served in another restaurant. Gone.
Do you think he could be served as a meal to the Machine, Brian Cage?
Well, Cage could certainly drive him, so Cage can go too. Cutlet, somebody tell us what he does besides went to grade school with the Hardley Boys.
He's their stooge.
He's not a real wrestler. He's not a real manager.
That's right.
He is there for comic relief in a funny outfit at ringside. Their matches are already hilarious enough, often unintentionally. He has no purpose, and he shoots their video. I'm sure there's people that can shoot video that don't have to be presented as wrestlers. So no, Brandon Cutlet is probably the single most useless person on that roster, except for Michael knock it the fuck off, who is apparently in his 40s. So go ahead. And Cage is, you can't rehab Brian Cage. He's a fucking meathead who thinks that he knows how to work, and his matches are rotten, and he can't take advantage of his nature-given physique, which is the only positive thing about him. So no, immediately run him off. All he does is make guys with good bodies that can work look smaller.
Brian Pillman Jr.
Is he still there? I'd keep
He's
him.
Listed on the roster page. I don't know how updated this is.
I would keep him to see if we could go back in time to last year or whatever, when he could have gotten over, and see if we can do that. Obviously, Griff Garrison needs to go away quickly. Keep Pillman. Griff is gone.
Would you try Pillman as a heel?
Probably eventually. Maybe you could get some kind of mileage out of Griff just if Pillman finally had enough and Griff lost a fall and Pillman went in there and pile drived him and said, fuck you and fuck everybody and fuck this company. I should have been a goddamn star when my dad was on Dark Side of the Ring. And I've been working my ass off and I never get booked because I'm not friends with those fucking, Peter Puffin clowns over in the corner. So I'm just mad at everybody, and then become a heel. That might work. It would certainly be believable.
What about Brock Anderson?
I had forgotten he existed.
Me too, until I saw his picture here.
Again, you hate to say that the offspring of a guy like Arn Anderson wouldn't have a spot on your roster, but when I saw Brock, I wasn't blown away, and we've never seen him again, so I probably think maybe Brock is selling cars at some point.
Brody King of the House of Black.
That's interesting because a lot of people liked him when he came in. Of course, that always happens. They're popular till they come in on this program. He's a big, fat, tattooed guy in the whole House of Black thing, but he can move around a little bit. I don't know that we've ever seen him, really stand out in any way, but at the same time, he's not a complete clown like Angelico or whatever.
He's a giant guy covered in tattoos. Do you think the fact that that doesn't stand out anymore in wrestling says a lot about the way everyone looks in wrestling nowadays?
That may be part of the problem, because 30 years ago, he would have been unique. And now he looks so much like every other jack-off that doesn't know what he's doing, because every fucking guy that age is a big fat fuck with pots and pans hanging off their ears and goddamn nuts and bolts stuck through their nose and tattoos on every part of their body. So it's not unusual anymore. I could put him down with an asterisk, see what happens if you send him in a different direction, whether there's anything there, but I don't know.
Bryan Danielson of the Blackpool Combat Club.
Not only definitely keep him, but also if we could erase the last 10 months, he'd be the AEW World Heavyweight Champion. No more needs to be said.
Buddy Matthews of the Dark Order. Of the House of Black. I get confused with all these.
Or whichever one. Let's see if he can get in the Buddy system somewhere else. Buddy's gone.
A AAA and Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champion, Cash Wheeler of FTR and The Pinnacle.
Well, for fuck's sake, FTR is down here. We're keeping both of them. Not like that's a surprise. And they're the World Tag Team Champions because they're the best tag team in the business. And then we would bring Mark and Jay Briscoe over to fucking fight them so we could have more great state-of-the-art tag team matches, and they might sell some tickets. So yes, FTR is firmly here on the roster.
The Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Champion, Chris Jericho of the Jericho Appreciation Society. Now, you can't deny his star power.
Yeah, and I said the same thing for Moxley, and that's why I kept Moxley, and thinking that hopefully that he would be able to do as instructed. Jericho, at this point, though, he's been there. We've seen it. I think if you were to keep... You can't change Chris's mind. He's firmly stuck in 15 years ago WWF, and he wants to be the guy, and he's trying to run everybody out of his way. But if you could control his personality and you could send him home for a while with an injury or whatever and let people miss him because he went away and bring him back as Chris Jericho, legendary wrestler, he's a babyface, and he comes back and has a program with another top guy, that might work. But now he's just been hanging around for so long and doing his stupid shit, and people are tuning out in droves, and he's surrounded with job guys so he can be the star, and he ain't getting anybody over. So I wouldn't have a spot for him right now.
Christian Cage
is, if he was healthy and he's got the arm injury situation taken care of, he's the perfect guy to put in the ring with the young guys to slow them down and teach them how to think and listen. I would always have Christian around my company. He'd be a producer if he couldn't get in the ring.
Speaking of producers, Christopher Daniels.
I love Chris Daniels. I liked his work. I liked him as a person. I always enjoyed working with him. He's with the Pro Wrestling Chimpanzee gang. Maybe it's just because he's from California and knows them a little better or whatever. That would make me think, okay, is there a mole in the locker room that is going to report back to the cosplay crowd? But otherwise, just the experience I've had with Christopher Daniels at this point, with his age, obviously, he would be an agent / producer. But, with his experience and his knowledge, and he's not a guy that has bad habits or whatever, I would want Chris Daniels around. I would just be concerned that his mind has been polluted by the Buckaroos. All right, moving on.
Moving on, I did not realize that this was the nickname of this wrestler. The Kentucky Gentleman, Chuck Taylor of the Best Friends.
Yeah, get old Chuck will fuck a fucking rented minivan so Trent's mother can ship him out. No, it's ridiculous. Again, a friend job, a favor job. The guy looks like shit. The guy can't fucking work. He's the epitome of an indie wrestler, some jackoff that can wander into a barn and get in the ring and be allowed to do it. Chuck Taylor. What the fuck? Let's play the name game. Chuck, Bo Buck, Banana Fana, fuck you. Take the fuck off. And don't slander Kentucky while you're at it. Moving on.
Certainly a different name game than I'm used to. Claudio Castagnoli of the Blackpool Combat Club.
Well, no Blackpool Combat Club, but Claudio Castagnoli would be on any roster that any sane, reasonable person would put together, because not only is he a great talent, but also he's a heck of a guy. He doesn't have bad habits, and he's smart and capable of helping in a variety of ways. They've used him rotten, and now, when's the last time we saw him on TV? Has it been a month?
No, him and Wheeler Yuta, I think, ran in to save, who would they have saved?
Well, I'm talking about wrestling instead of doing stooge work with job guys. But anyway, yes, Claudio's a keeper in anybody's book.
Again, this is how the roster is currently listed on their website. CM Punk.
Well, everybody knows what I think there.
The next name on the list here, Boom Boom Colt Cabana of the Dark Order.
Oh, good Lord.
Literally next to Punk on the roster page.
Bye-bye, Boom Boom. Let's move on.
You already mentioned Colton Gunn. Danhausen.
Well, let's write that one down next to Pockets. And, you know, if that kid had just done weird interviews at FanFest and I'd never actually seen him wrestle or the cursing thing or the whole thing, I, might not be so hard on him, but Jesus H. Christ. So we're getting a big line of people to send away, and we don't have a ton of them to keep. Go ahead.
The Ring of Honor Pure Champion, Daniel Garcia of the Jericho Appreciation Society.
See, here's the thing. If they had done this in any way like a sane, normal, reasonable person, Daniel Garcia in the opening matches, he's a young, early 20s kid. He's athletic. He's got some size. He can wrestle a little bit. He can't talk. He ain't got any personality, but he's barely old enough to fucking enlist in the army. He's not even old enough to rent a car. These are the kind of guys you never know. That's why you put him over somewhere. He'd be one of the 5 or 6. You put him over somewhere and you bring him along slowly and you get him ready for 3 years from now or whatever. But this guy comes in with absolutely no personality or oomph to him, just a guy doing moves. And because that is who the modern indie wrestler like the Cucamonga Kids or Twinkle Toes or whatever, that's the kind of person they look for, because they can't determine money drawing talent. And they don't know how to develop talent from what it is now to what it could be. They just see, oh, he's like a chimpanzee. He can do a bunch of moves, so let's use him. And he's a nice guy. There's a lot of nice people that I wouldn't necessarily put in certain positions. So if I was going to operate a wrestling promotion, Daniel Garcia's a guy, I'd say, okay, we'll keep him underneath. We'll put him in the preliminaries. We'll give him some experience, let him work with some people and see how he develops. But right now, after the way they've used him, no, fuck no. Jesus Christ, it's just running viewers off. Because everybody knows it's like when they were trying to push Rocky Maivia to the moon and the people rebelled against it because the roster was so filled with talent and they could tell Rocky was green and they were pushing him on purpose and they rebelled against it. People can tell who is Daniel Garcia and why should he be here? So I'd give him some time off and let him come back later on at another point.
With Rocky Maivia, the fans sniffed out that it wasn't natural, that he was playing a role that wasn't even a role he came up with. Right.
And that he was winning constantly, even though he wasn't ready for that spot based on the competition on the roster of other people that were more experienced and more, at the time, more over and more established.
Jim, what about Dante Martin of Top Flight?
When was the last time that name was mentioned?
Top Flight or Dante Martin?
Dante Martin, either one.
It's been a while. It's been a bit.
Again, he had tremendous freakish athletic ability and that leaping, but he had, mutt face and just hangdog expression and no personality. And, maybe as a baby face because he's an underdog kind of kid. He had talent. He was very green. He was having a lot of those cosplay matches with the trampoline bunch where that they would just do flips and he wasn't learning anything. If he'd been in a place with a lot of veterans that could try to impart some wisdom and teach him how to channel that athleticism, then maybe put a mask on him, cover up that moop face, and you'd have a kid superhero flying around. But I don't know. I've never, I did meet him. He was in MLW about 3 or 4 years ago. But I don't know whether he's now convinced by these people that he was a star and he knows everything and this is what he ought to be doing, or if he would accept, okay, you got a lot of ability and a lot of athletic talent, but you need to be completely retrained and approach it a different way. Who knows? Let's put him he's a question mark next to Brody King.
And there's another wrestler in between these two I'll get to in a second, but on the other side is Darius Martin, the Top Flight, his brother. And I wanted to ask you the question in general. If you have a talented young wrestler who you see something in, but they frequently get knee injuries, what do you do? How do you proceed as a promoter?
Well, if they're a high flyer, then you proceed on to the next person because they ain't going to last very long at all. If that's the only thing that they do that stands out and they have multiple knee injuries, then you're buying damaged goods. If they can, Rico Constantino, when he was in OVW, was doing flips and backflips and moonsaults because he was a goddamn, not only had he been a police officer, an EMT and paramedic, and he'd been in American Gladiators, but he was also very gymnastic and he was a bodybuilder. He could do all kinds of shit. But then as a babyface, he's doing all the flips and flying stuff, even at 230 with a great physique, but he blows his knee, has knee surgery. So when he came back, he altered his style. We switched him heel. He had more personality as a heel and could talk and stayed on the ground more because he didn't have to be so flashy and impressive. If you can modify what you do after you have an injury that prevents you from doing what you were doing, then that's great. If that's the only thing you can do and you hurt yourself and can't do that, well, then you're fucked.
In baseball, a pitcher sometimes will hurt their shoulder, hurt their elbow, grow older, lose velocity, have to change the way they pitch. If you can't blow someone away with a 100-mile-per-hour fastball, you have to become a smarter pitcher. Do things differently, but maybe more effectively, or as effective. In wrestling, should wrestlers, how do I put this? If you're a wrestler who is a high flyer and you lose the ability to do everything you're doing or a lot of what you're doing, or you just shouldn't do it if you don't want to keep getting injured, should this be an opportunity to make yourself a smarter wrestler? Because you have to look at things a different way?
Well, it's not only an opportunity, it's mandatory. And the ones who do that are the ones who last, and the ones who don't are the ones who go away. And you've always got to constantly evaluate what you're doing in the ring as far as, for example, when you're trying to get over, you're going to do more than when you're already over. When you're already over, you can do that same thing, but only when it counts. Bobby Eaton was taking ridiculous bumps in Mid-South Wrestling because he'd never made money like that in his life, and he wanted to get over, and he did get over. And the Midnight Express got over. But then 3-4 years later, now the Midnight Express is over, and now it's a different thing. Now you're not trying to get over. You are already over, and as a result, you're in a spot where if you get hurt, it not only fucks up you and your partner, but it fucks up the company. Because now you're not a wrestler working hard on the undercard trying to get over and hurt and out of action. You're a guy that's already done that. You're in the main events. If you still work the same way and you're just bumping your ass off and just doing everything you can every night, small house or large house, small town or large town, small payoff or large payoff, sooner or later you're going to get hurt. You're going to fuck the company up. That's where you learn to back up and pick your spots and only take your special bumps on the big shows or go the extra mile on a television program or whatever. And then the guys you're working with that are young and trying to get in, you let them take some of the bumps because they're still trying to get over. It's a constant evolution. And then you get to the status where you're a legend. And then you can have, if you're Steve Austin, you can have a match and not leave your feet. And nobody notices or gives a shit because you're a fucking megastar. And then you can get more mileage out of it that way. But it's only the fucking ignorant people that just go out there and just dive off everything they can every time they get a chance, or call up outlaw promoters and want to be booked on it even though they've got guaranteed contracts because they just love playing with the children. And that's where you fucking get hurt. Because you don't listen and you don't learn and you don't evolve. And you think, oh, God, this is playtime now. This isn't business. So I can just be reckless if I want. Who's next?
Speaking of reckless, Darby Allin.
You know, I'd keep the motherfucker. I would laugh at him as a human being and as a blithering idiot every fucking time I saw him, but I'd keep him because he's got a weird charisma with young people who seem to like the idea of just for no compensation or apparent reason trying to kill yourself. But he's got something. I'd keep him.
Next on the list, well, we already did Dax Harwood, Dustin Rhodes.
I saw Dustin just tweeted a few days ago that he was evaluating his situation because age catches up with everybody, and he's been phenomenal. Dustin would definitely be there, whether it was in the ring or behind the scenes, as someone to give some advice. If you had a group of people who would listen to advice, he could probably give some good advice. I'd keep him.
Eddie Kingston.
You know, and we said this, Eddie Kingston, they could have had a tremendous, beloved babyface off that, Players Tribune article or whatever. But now it seems like Eddie still thinks that he's going to fucking outlaw shows and indies where he can just wander in the locker room and say anything to anybody and it doesn't matter and he don't see those people for a while or whatever. But he doesn't like anybody, and he's had altercations with a few people, and I know it's part of his gimmick, but he's been on national TV for a couple years now. It doesn't look like he's put any money in different tights or any time in the gym to mitigate the look somewhat. I like his promos, but at the same time, between the way he's been presented, is he stuck in his ways? I'm on the fence about Eddie now.
What about all ego Ethan Page?
Yeah, he can go all the way out. So we've dumped Ethan Page.
I think you dumped Adam Page too.
Pages. Yeah, we turned several pages.
Well, you going to turn the page on Evil Uno of the Dark Order?
Please, as quickly as possible. He'll be delivering pizzas. Pizzeria Uno.
Will he be delivering pizzas to Frankie Kazarian?
No, because Frankie Kazarian would be on the roster because he's an experienced athlete. He's a good-looking guy. He's got timing and presence, and I would use him as the upper middle card babyface.
Upper middle card?
Upper middle card babyface gatekeeper to the upper echelon. If a heel can beat Kazarian, then he can get up and play with the big boys. Because Frankie's older now. I'm not going to, say, he needs to be the world champion. But he's got experience and he knows what he's doing. If you get him away from the children again, and say, okay, now we're being serious again, Frankie, he can do that. And I think he could be an upper card guy.
I think if he had been booked differently, you may have an argument there. But I think at his age and his presence in AEW since the very beginning, I don't think there's any way you can make him that kind of guy now. If you want to say you want him on the roster to help guys, and he'll be at the most mid-card, but upper mid-card, I don't think anyone accepts him like that.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying is that he beats the middle and the underneath guys, and for the heel to cross him, he's a good gatekeeper there. You beat Kazarian, then you go up to the main events.
What about Fuego del Sol?
Yeah, he can Fuego del off.
And you said the same thing about Griff Garrison, correct?
Yeah, seriously. Fucking Pippi Longstocking was just holding fucking Pillman back, and Pillman's the one they'd beat every time instead of that fucking long, tall drink of water.
The FTW champion is Hook.
Hook, again, I'd keep. He's got something, and he had something until we stopped being able to see him, and then he got thrown in with Danhausen and a bunch of other jack-offs or whatever. But the kid, he's one of the small group of guys you start now and bring along slowly for a few years from now.
Isaiah Cassidy, a private party.
What's the other private party's name?
Mark Quinn.
He's the one that can really jump even better than fucking Dante Martin. But again, we haven't seen him in ages. We didn't see him regularly to begin with. They tried to put him over at the start until the Bucks actually did put him over, and that killed him because they put him over in that phony way. They're green. Quinn can leap like crazy. I don't know about Cassidy. Probably not. Quinn, I would keep, and again, hide somewhere in training until he could use his athletic ability, but not be tempted to go into full-on square dancing routines with the rest of these jackoffs. And as I remember what he looks like, probably put a cool mask on him also, because he's got a moop face of his own, but he'd be a kid's superhero with that high-flying bullshit.
You think everyone has a moop face?
I just remember him. Now maybe I'm thinking of Street Profits. I'm thinking of one of the Street Profits instead of one of the Private Profits, because
I don't know.
They came along with a team in each company that looked almost exactly the same and the same gimmick and dressed up and et cetera and whatever.
Well, let's find out. Let's see if I'm right or you're wrong. Let's see if I'm right or you're right, I guess is the way I should put it.
Hey, wait a minute now.
Does everyone have a moop face? Jim, would you keep Jake Hager of the Jericho Appreciation Society?
Oh, my God. Captain Moop himself.
The charismatic Jake Hager. Would you keep him on your roster?
What has Jake Hager done to this day? He has not had one good match. He never speaks, much less cuts a good promo. He hardly ever wrestles to begin with. And even when he's ringside as a stooge for Jericho, he looks like he's a lost ball in high weeds, screaming, "Find me! Find me!" What the fuck? He's awkward and has two left feet. How did this guy even get in the fucking business?
Well, he was, I think, someone that Jerry Briscoe may have gone after. He was a wrestler, and I think he was a wrestler in Oklahoma, actually.
As well, see, that just proves that even the great ones amongst us sometimes make a misjudgment.
But for AEW, he's Jericho's boy, and everyone knows that. What about Jay Lethal?
I think everybody
Can he be repaired? Can he be repaired? I guess that's the big...
Well, I mean, none of this that we're talking about is ever going to happen anyway. This is a completely made-up, pulled-out-of-our-ass scenario where I'm choosing who to keep and who to get rid of, but Jay Lethal would be a fucking stellar addition to any goddamn wrestling roster or locker room, not only for his promos, but for his ability in the ring, for his look, for his attitude. He's another guy. When we worked with him at Ring of Honor, he didn't have any bad outside the ring habits. He's not going to show up impaired. He was always on time for appearances, autograph sessions, did the PR, talked to the TV stations, whatever. That's a guy you want to have and you want to use, and he's still young enough to fucking have a bright future. And they brought him in and beat him again and beat him again, and then fucking stuck him in with a goddamn bunch of dipshits that either on his side or that he was opposed to. And that goddamn Zippy the Giant Pinhead, that's been hanging around Jay's neck. Sometimes it's criminal what they have done to talent. FTR, Lethal, etc., etc. So yes, Lethal goes in the keeper column.
Well, look both ways before you cross the street. Jeff Hardy.
As bad as I hate to say it, no, Jeff does not make the cut. Because at this point, yes, he's a big name and a big star and people like him, but at what point do you want to be responsible for a fucking nearly middle-aged guy or nearly 50-year-old guy at this point now fucking killing himself? And or taking him around the country where he'll be exposed to more bad influences. No, Jeff does not need to be in the ring at this point doing the things that he feels he has to do to be Jeff Hardy.
What about John Silver of the Dark Order?
What about him?
All right, I think that answers that. Here's an interesting one for you. Jungle Boy. Jack Perry.
2 years ago, 3 years ago, I said, boy, if, again, great-looking underdog babyface kid has that white meat babyface face on him. And when he was with people who knew what they were doing, he can sell, and then he had some fire on his comeback. His matches made sense. If he's in there with his friends and all the rest of his current generation, then it's just bullshit, just flipping and flopping and the thing with the dinosaur. No promo to speak of whatsoever, no personality to speak of whatsoever. I thought as he grew into this that might come out, but it's not. Apparently nobody's trying to bring it out. He's been there a long time doing the same shit and has spun his wheels because of the booking and because he does not grow. He doesn't get bigger. I'm not talking size-wise. I'm talking about talent-wise. He hasn't stopped doing the flippy matches. He still hadn't learned how to lead himself to where he makes sense. He doesn't do a promo with any passion whatsoever. I think we need to find another young, good-looking babyface at this point.
What about Limitless Keith Lee?
You got to keep him. There's something there. If we can get him to sound mad instead of fucking like Fraser Crane and use the physical attributes he's got, I'm not willing to give up on him yet, but he does seem like that maybe they knew what they were doing when they fired him up north, because he looks like the Hulk and he acts like Bruce Banner, and it just kind of slows shit down.
It has everyone's nickname above their name, like Limitless Keith Lee or Superbad Kip Sabian, I'll ask you about in a moment, but Executive Vice President Kenny Omega.
Yeah. What do you think, Brian?
I think you would try to get some value out of him.
No, I wouldn't, because here's the thing. I am disgusted by the motherfucker's existence in the wrestling industry, that this guy can do the things he's done in front of witnesses and still call himself a professional wrestler and have people like the demented Uncle Dave and the Alzheimer's for Lunch bunch say, oh, he's the greatest wrestler in the world. He should have had his legs broken and been left in a ditch for what he did to the wrestling business in front of paying customers. And I will never forgive that. And I wouldn't hire that fucking guy for a wrestling company and reward him by calling him a professional wrestler after the activities he's been involved in. If you dipped him in glue and drug him through Fort Knox and he came out covered in $7 million in gold, I wouldn't give him 15 fucking cents. Also, as I've mentioned, every time he opens that fucking pie hole of his and starts spouting off, I have come to the conclusion that even if I hadn't seen him wrestle a fucking 6-year-old girl or a blow-up sex doll or dressed as a goddamn I Dream of Jeannie or sticking his fingers up other guys' asses in wrestling matches, I would still dislike the motherfucker and not want to spend 5 minutes in the same room with him, because I can tell that we are completely, maybe even more than me and Shitstain, completely opposite human beings. And I don't see why anybody would want to associate with Twinkle Toes. And so therefore, I don't care if he can beat the reanimated corpse of Lou Thez. He does not deserve to be rewarded for his indiscretions by being called a professional wrestler. Fuck Kenny Omega and fish heads.
I would put my money on the reanimated corpse of Luthez in that battle, but
Yeah.
Jim, there's a lot here. We're going to at least get through M. We may have to continue this on the drive-thru.
Jesus Christ. We're going to have to count these at the end also.
What about Superbad Kip Sabian?
Yeah, what about him? Seriously, is it children's wrestling? Is this the Romper Room Wrestling Association? If I need somebody to fucking crawl into my attic in a tight space and fix something, I'll call Kip Sabian. If I want a grown man, I'll call a grown man. And the two things are mutually exclusive.
Would you call Kyle O'Reilly?
Yes, I would. If he can ever wrestle again after whatever they've done to him, that he just had surgery. We've talked about it. Kyle O'Reilly is the one guy that has made an MMA-influenced style work for him. He does things differently, but he's very athletic. He's not the biggest dog in the fight, but he's rangy and makes you believe what he's doing he's kind of serious. And he was basically stuck. He should have been actually equally as good of an addition as Adam Cole. And instead, he was stuck subservient to Adam Cole, and Adam Cole was made to look like a fucking complete idiot from the start. And Kyle got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, remember, he didn't come over with Adam Cole. He stayed in NXT a little bit after that, and they started using him better. But then when he went to AEW, he was just right back to being Adam Cole's flunky.
Yeah. And a flunky of people that we don't even ever see. So, but I love Kyle O'Reilly and his different style and his serious approach to the business. And he just landed in fucking Fantasyland.
Well, maybe he'll make better decisions now that he's not driving around with Bobby Fish. But Jim, what about the Murder Hawk monster, Lance Archer?
I don't have anything against Lance. The only thing, I wish he wouldn't do that goofy rope walk and into a moonsault in every match because he's so big and so strong and such a badass looking guy. That looks so phony. It takes you out of it. In the ring, he's okay. I'm not going to say he's goddamn Jack Briscoe, but he's got size and he's got a mean look and a demeanor. But then they made him a complete laughing stock from the start when they would do the phony shit with him where he would be preceded out of the entranceway he'd throw one of the production assistants or somebody he happened to snatch in the hallway. He'd throw him out first and he'd beat him up or carry him to the ring or whatever. It's all fake. And it's all stupid and nobody believed it. And then he was pushed for a while and then he disappeared. And plus he was saddled with Jake. And Jake has no idea how to get anybody over but himself. Jake always was alleged to have a brilliant mind for psychology of wrestling, and he did for himself and what worked for him. I've worked with him on a creative team. Everybody says, oh, Jake's experienced. He's got good booking ideas. No, he fucking doesn't. I worked with him on the creative team until Vince even got fed up with it, which was only like 2 or 3 months. He doesn't have any good ideas for anybody but himself. He doesn't have good promos for anybody but himself. And a lot of wrestlers were like that. They could get themselves over, but they can't do it for somebody else. So all those things Archer was a victim of. I'd keep the individual if we could spread mass hypnosis around as far as how he's been exposed thus far.
What about Big Shoddy Lee Johnson?
I think we have to let Lee find another line of work right now because what the fuck? We haven't seen him in months, and he was one of the interchangeable guys with Agogo and Angelico and Garcia and Del Fugo Del Sol and Griff Garrison, and it's all just hanging around. Yes, I'm sure they can do some good wrestling moves, but we can't fucking employ everybody. This is not Make-A-Wish, even though Tony runs it like that. Next name.
What about not Shoddy Lee Moriarty?
I can't remember him. Which one is he?
He's the one that's in the firm, I think.
The Firm, you mean with fucking Eric Clapton and Robert Palmer and...
No, I mean The Firm with Stokely Hathaway. And Robert Palmer. And
yeah, yeah. If he comes back as Professor Moriarty, Sherlock Holmes' arch rival and nemesis, then I'll take it.
What about Luchosaurus?
Yeah, how quick can we get a fucking truck pulled up to haul him out of here?
Now, he is one that previously in the past you thought there were things they could do with him, specifically early on with the tag team with Jungle Boy.
And that horse has left the barn a long time ago. Because now we've seen he never changes his matches. He's obviously a blithering idiot. Because he looks like that, and yet he's got to backflip in every match. He's a giant muscle builder that could work like a monster. And I've seen a picture of him now without his mask, so the mask looks cool, as long as you don't see that fucking... He's got dreadlocks, for fuck's sake. A white guy with Whoopi Goldberg's fucking hairdo. He can't work, he can't put a match together. He can do flips, but if you smashed him, if you just said, okay, here's this big dumb musclehead, and he's going to listen to every word that we say and do everything we tell him to do, you could get him over to steal a pay-per-view or to steal a show. You could smash him over smaller guys quickly, decisively, then do an angle with a top baby face that was a good worker, and that guy could get a match, a main event match, once out of Luchosaurus. But then he would be exposed and you would have stolen the pay-per-view, and then you got to get rid of Luchosaurus because he can't do anything on his own, and he's a complete idiot. And I'll be goddamned if I would stand there for the minute that it takes him to set this shit up and let a 280-pound fucking giant 6.5-foot bodybuilder backflip blind off of a high place and land on me. Elbows, knees, back of his head, his big bulbous ass, whatever the fuck was going on, I'd be gone.
Well, looking at someone here who has risen from just a wrestler to, through hard work, dedication, and of course, supreme wrestling intellect, becoming a producer, what about Luther of the Chaos Project?
Why don't you go down to the county drunk tank and pick out any other fat, bald fucker and put them in the ring drunk? The match would be the same. Remember the match he had on TV when they were trying to put him on TV where he actually fell off the apron by accident when nobody had touched him?
Well, look, it pays to be friends with Chris Jericho.
But it's a 50-something-year-old fat guy that was an indie wrestler that nobody'd ever heard of 30 years ago.
But he's friends with Chris Jericho. That's enough.
I've got a bunch of friends that nobody has ever heard of, and we're going to keep it that way. That's not an excuse. Tony is the boss. And if you just took
Does he know that?
No, he doesn't. But take one look at this fat fuck Luther that's 50-something years old, never had a career in wrestling to begin with, worked in outlaw matches in Japan and rec centers in parts of Canada, couldn't get picked out of a police lineup, was the shits to begin with, then did death matches, then took 20 years off in some drunk tank somewhere, I guess. I don't know.
And then Chris Jericho called and said, "You're not going to believe the kind of person I just met."
Exactly. And Luther comes back to wrestling. And I'm sorry that the truth hurts, but somebody disagree with me so that we can all laugh at you that Dr. Luther was ever a name of any size, status, or recognition in the wrestling business on any major level anywhere. The answer is not no, but fuck no. And Tony Khan was conned into fucking giving this guy, one assumes, a couple $1,000s a month at least. And that, contribute your money to charity and it would be useful. Or just give it to this guy to fucking waller around and take up space. What wrestler is going to listen to somebody that looks like that works like that? We've seen his work, and it's reprehensible, and that they never did anything to begin with.
But he's friends with Chris Jericho. What other qualifications does he need?
Oh, my God.
Speaking of someone who's a name,
it's like when they made Disco Inferno an agent in fucking TNA just because Russo got a kick out of him. And there's Disco Inferno trying to tell fairly big wrestling stars what to fucking do. This is 20 times worse. At least Disco Inferno was on television in this country. Or even on television. The outlaw shows he worked in Japan, Luther wasn't on TV. Luther. Fuck.
Someone who was on TV, Jim, do you keep Mark Henry, the world's strongest man?
Keep him doing what? What's he fucking doing?
He has an interview segment on Rampage that lasts about 90 seconds.
Did it? I thought he did, but has it been seen lately? Nobody watches Rampage to find out.
Yeah, truth be told, I don't know, but apparently, according to this, he has a career record of 0-0 in AEW.
Well, yeah, and he's got a bad back. And I love Mark Henry, and Mark's had a long career, and we helped train him, and I've never had a cross word with him until he went nuts and got all dramatic over my goddamn chicken joke a few years ago, and then I was disappointed in him. But he can't wrestle anymore, so I thought they were going to make him an announcer, but then they backed up on that. They signed him with big fanfare. So I don't have a problem with employing Mark Henry, but what is it exactly they want him to do there? You could find something for a guy like that to do, but they haven't. Go ahead.
What about Smart Mark Sterling?
Yeah, boy. Can we just set him on fire? He gives managers a bad name.
No, we can't just set him on fire. That's against the rules.
Can we throw him out a window?
Possibly. That may be with the rules.
Yeah, but only if it's on the first floor, I guess.
Yes, and as long as there's no fire involved. You already said you would keep Mark Quinn of Private Party.
Yeah.
Matt Hardy of the Hardys.
If he was younger, I'd say, my God, they did the horrible gimmicks, the bad angles. He's switched back and forth from babyface to heel. He's cheating people on their contracts. Then he speaks as himself for 1 week. Then he teleports to another dimension. Then he looks like Beatrice Arthur in Vincent Price's fucking wardrobe. Then he's come back to being Big Money Matt. Then he's got brain damage because they've killed him again. If he was younger, I'd say go away and come back when they miss you, but he doesn't have that much time left. So I don't see what they've made him so meaningless. And when you see Matt's face on that TV show now, you know, oh my God, this is going to suck. And it's going to involve every underneath talent they can't figure out something to do with. So no, unfortunately, no.
What about Executive Vice President Matt Jackson of the Young Bucks?
Oh, and him and his brother both. That's the reason why that this company has self-destructed. And they brought their initial small group of simpleton fans that enjoy their bullshit. They got just big enough that they could sway Tony Khan that, we could have a brand new, revolutionary wrestling promotion. Until it got on television, you see that that's what you see from these two. Every fucking match. Same thing. Same thing. Same thing. Never changes. Never serious. Visually ridiculous. Smarmy promos that sound fake and annoy you at the same time. The ridiculous wardrobe. The flunkies that they get jobs, high-paying jobs for, that accompany them around in their group because they think they're important. They're a blight on the leaf of the wrestling plant. So both young bucks immediately get exiled to goddamn Buckville. Send them back to Cucamonga.
Yeah, maybe they could transform Pro Wrestling Guerrilla into being a big thing, but what about Matt Menard, Daddy Magic of the Jericho Appreciation Society?
Well, remember we bopped him up in 2.0. Yeah, if we get him away from Jericho and they got some oomph to him, let's see what they've got. We could make him serious.
Matt Sydal.
Nice kid. Is he still there? Hadn't seen him in months. Very small. I have to say that we could probably do better. Some other new guy that has not been exposed to be a twat in their booking.
Michael Nakazawa. He looks like the... I never thought this, but I'm looking at the picture of him here. He looks like... You ever seen the movie Mac and Me?
Yes.
The alien Mac? He looks just like fucking Mac in this picture.
Okay, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Who defends his presence? That do even the trampoline cowboy fans that like the Cucamonga Kids and that whole play group there from old pro wrestling fucking chimpanzee, do they even give a shit for this guy? Has anybody ever liked this guy or given a shit? Remember, they had him on television wrestling in the opening weeks of AEW. He's the guy that would pull baby oil out of his tights, squirt baby oil all over himself, and then they couldn't get a hold on him. Has he ever had not even a good match? Has he ever had an acceptable match? Has he ever done a promo? Has he ever contributed anything to the wrestling business otherwise than standing around and holding Kenny Olivier's dick in his fucking hand because he's the dick holding flunky?
The answer is no. He is just Kenny Omega's stooge. He means nothing to anyone in America, and I don't even think too many Japanese wrestling fans are big Michael Nakazawa fans. He
wasn't a Japanese wrestler. He did like outlaw shit that the people in Japan don't even know is happening. It's not like he got this great Japanese wrestler to come from Tokyo. It's a fucking stooge that played wrestling in Japan until his friend got him a job to play wrestling in America. So no, he's out. He's gone. Set fire to the fucking room in the bed that he was sleeping in case he left lice.
Jim, what about the Redeemer, Miro?
You gotta keep that fucking guy. He may be a fucking complete psychopath. He may not be that bright, but he looks great. And he had good matches that brief period of time after they finished him playing with his little friend Pip and Penelope Pitstop. He came out as a beast and beating the shit out of people and cutting these weird promos, mad at God. And then he disappeared again. But if you get the good Miro, I'd keep him.
This one's probably a layup. MJF.
Oh, no, I don't know if we've got room for him. Yeah, how fast can I give him a $5 million raise?
$5 million raise?
Yeah.
All right. That was an easy negotiation. Jim, from the House of Black, Malachi Black.
Well, you've got a guy that just said he didn't want to wrestle, so I would take him at his word. I'd say, okay, you signed a contract with me to wrestle. I'm stupid enough that I signed you for allegedly 5 years. So now you go home because you don't want to wrestle, and I'll pay you so you don't go anywhere else and make me look further like an idiot. But this guy's been a disappointment since the start. He looked good. We thought, okay, the guy looks like a badass. Had some buzz about him, came in, did the thing with Cody, okay, and then all of a sudden Supernatural City came in, and every match of his, he would have a good match that would go in the toilet because he was playing some kind of spooky mind games with people. And then he gets a group around him, and they cater to him until he realizes he ain't getting over, and then he wants to go back to where he kind of got over a little better, and can't get out of his contract, and then decides he wants to take time off from wrestling. I'd give him all the time off from wrestling he wants, because I don't think you can save this guy from his own mind, because he's an idiot.
Well, Jim, 2 more names here today, and again, we'll finish this more than likely on the drive-thru this week.
Yeah, because I didn't know that Tony was giving out all this goddamn free money.
It is a lot when you read it like this.
We are closing in on 100 names right now. Just me writing these down on a legal pad with generally 26 lines, I'm coming up at almost 100, and we're at the M's.
The next name I'm going to give you, I have to say, looking at the photo of him here, he looks like a monster. It looks like a classic wrestler, someone you could do something with. Whenever you see him in the ring, he has size, he has a look. and then they beat him and don't do anything with him, so I don't know if they just don't think he's worth it. But Nick Camarado of the Factory.
I'd take him in a second. I would, because not only he's got the fucking physique, but also the wild hair and the beard. You could give him a gimmick and you could get it over. And he doesn't have, again, who gives a shit about great wrestling matches? We're talking about getting talent over. It's two completely separate things. And especially with what the people consider great wrestling matches now that are fucking abysmal, take a guy like that, give him a gimmick, give him a manager, put him in a group, give him a partner, somebody to fucking help lead him as he gets experience, and you could do something with that guy because he looks like a gimmick. I would keep Camarado in a heartbeat, see what I could get out of him.
And the final name today, part one of Jim's look at the AEW roster and who he would keep and who he would get rid of, it's Sockeye, Nick Jackson of the Young Bucks.
Well, I believe I just grouped him with his fucking brother, and Mama Buck should have swallowed that night. And that way we'd have got rid of both of them. Although after seeing Papa Buck, I have a feeling the mailman had something to do with it. Because I don't think Papa Buck did that on his own.
All right. Well,
he looks just as fucking simpy and fucking... Jesus Christ as the rest of them. It looked like a 60-year-old fucking... How can a guy that looks like a 60-year-old hippie from California be a right-wing religious lunatic?
Ignorance?
I don't know. So hold on here a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
The Ladybugs play at the Ladybugs picnic.
21, 22, 23, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30, 31, 32. And there's another 55. We're at 75 people, and we're only to the M's, and half these people we haven't seen on television in months. What a fucking... This is a goddamn Chinese fire drill. It's not a talent roster. There's no thought went into this whatsoever. There's no pattern. There's no concept here. There's no, okay, this talent works because of the style of wrestling I'm presenting. There's no pre-plan. There's no plan. There's no thought. It's just people walk up in front of him and somebody says, this guy's a friend of mine. He's real good. Sign him. And he does. And he's ended up with, can you imagine if you put a zoo together like this? You'd have the anteaters next to the goddamn possums, next to the goddamn tigers, next to the chimpanzees, next to the one-celled amoeba.
And if any of them were friends with an emu, they'd get a job right away.
That's right. And you know those emus...
That's your favorite place, right? Emu's Pizza?
No, it's Emo's Pizza.
Oh.